Thursday and time for bullet points. Your bullet points today include, well, we're just one day away now from Donald Trump being inaugurated, the 45th president of the United States. We got that going for you. We've got the laundry list of all the big hitters from Michigan on the way into town, while a former president and first lady are now both hospitalized. We'll talk about that. Plus, the story we broke here a couple of days ago about the fourth grade teacher protecting the children from hearing Donald Trump's inaugural speech. It has gone absolutely viral. I made my way to Fox News last night. We'll talk about that straight ahead and so much more. You're listening to a Thursday edition of the Steve Gruber Show, so get ready, have some coffee. Let's do this.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
Well, I can tell you, Washington, D.C. is a city preparing for the big event, a couple of them, in fact. You've got the inauguration of the president on Friday tomorrow, and, of course, the day after that, a big march on Washington by women, a women's march coming here. So, you know, from Lafayette Park to Capitol Hill and all surrounding areas, it is pretty well on lockdown. But I'm here in the capital city. I'm here in the nation's capital with Ivy. We're both here in the Boyle Studios of Hillsdale College, just part of Capitol Hill down here. Quite a facility. Glad to be part of it. Glad that Hillsdale College decided to partner with us. We appreciate their support and their help for this. And as all the Michigan people get prepared to head to Washington, people like Congressman Tim Walberg and Congressman Bill Huizenga, of course, they're here all the time. But they'll be joined by Governor Snyder, Ronald Romney McDaniel, Attorney General Bill Schuette, Ruth Johnson, Betsy DeVos, of course, will be here. And former presidents. You've heard all this nonsense and conflict about Democrats that, well, they're not going to show up because they don't consider him to be a legitimate president and so on and so forth. What they can't get over is the fact that they lost. All right, here's the thing. They lost. Donald Trump got 57% of the Electoral College, and regardless of how you slice it, that is the bottom line. That's the takeaway. But here's who will be here. Jimmy Carter will be here, along with former First Lady Rosalind, Bill, and yes, Hillary Clinton will be here. So I want you to think, let that sink in for a moment. After how contentious this campaign was, how ugly, how vile at times it was, Hillary Clinton still understands that the peaceful transfer of power is something that is powerful and important, and that's something she has to give respect for. So she'll be here. And George W. Bush will be here, along with Barbara Butt. Former President George H.W. Bush will not be. He is hospitalized, and now so is former First Lady Barbara Bush. She has bronchitis, both hospitalized. The elder President Bush, who is 92 years old now, admitted to the intensive care unit at Houston Methodist Hospital to address, quote, an acute respiratory problem stemming from pneumonia. Doctors performing a procedure to protect and clear his airway that required sedation, according to a hospital spokesman there. By last night, the former president was no longer sedated. He is in stable condition, but he is in intensive care. He is conscious. He is engaged. But quite a distraction. In fact, he wrote a letter. He penned a letter to Donald Trump, and apparently he was willing to come to the inauguration, but he just said, and quite frankly, he said, it would put me 6 feet under. He said to Donald Trump about his possibly coming to the inauguration. Speaking to CNN's Jamie Gangel, doctors said they wanted to keep Bush in ICU for observation because he's still intubated, and their intention is to keep his airway open. President Bush, first hospitalized over the weekend, suffering from shortness of breath and a cough, was treated with IV antibiotics, but he's 92 years old. Now think about this. He goes much longer. He'll be the longest living American president. I believe that honor is currently in the hands of Ronald Reagan. but I'd have to check my records. I think Ronald Reagan lived longer than anyone else. Okay, so that's what's happening here in Washington. And over the course of the next couple of days, we'll be broadcasting to you live, giving you our firsthand observations of the city itself, the security measures that are being put in place, tens of thousands of both law enforcement, military, National Guard, all in place to make sure that this runs smoothly. Because obviously it is a target for those that would want to do us harm, both overseas and domestically. So it's a big target, and of course they're taking that very seriously, as you can imagine. We'll give you an idea on that. Now, this morning we were able to move around okay, but we're told that by this afternoon a lot of the streets around Capitol Hill will be closing down. All right. So here's a couple of stories that will surprise you, to say the least. President Obama has pardoned a terrorist, actually, and it came by shortening his term by, 35 years. This terrorist from the FALN. Now, that might not sound familiar to you, but the FALN was a terrorist group demanding that Puerto Rico become a free state, become a free nation many years ago. Many bombings from the FALN from 1977 until the 1980s. In fact, several people were murdered by this group. And Obama has decided to free one of the leaders. This man is, in a word, a terrorist, and he has been freed. His name is Oscar Lopez Rivera. And as you can imagine, it has sparked outrage across the nation. He was convicted of trying to overthrow the government and named a leader of a terrorist group that bombed public buildings and killed people, frankly. Joe Connor, whose father was killed in an infamous FALN terrorist bombing in Manhattan, said, "I am disgusted by what the president did. It is a travesty. It is a travesty." I might remind you, do you remember this shooting back in 1955 from your history books that happened in the Senate gallery, also conducted by Puerto Rican separatists? And, here it is once again. Terrorists released by this president, actual terrorists released 35 years early. Let that sink in for a moment. The hotline number here is 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. Love to have you as part of the program today. Also, follow us on Facebook. Chime in on this. We're going to talk about the teacher here in a moment. The fourth grade teacher banning students from seeing Donald Trump because he might offend them in some way, might use profanity, might say something bad about minorities and women and handicapped people, which is complete and abject garbage. But 888-900-9966. Check it out on Facebook. It's the Steve Gruber Show on a Thursday. We'll be right back.
Michigan, born and raised with Midwestern values and Michigan common sense.
After on this Thursday, it's the Steve Gruber Show coming to you from Boyle Studios. It's a facility of Hillsdale College found in the Kirby Center, Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C. Great to be working with Hillsdale again on this project and appreciate their support, and their studios are fabulous. And it's nice to wake up in the nation's capital, especially at this moment when a historic exchange of power is going to happen. The peaceful exchange of power that nobody was quite sure was going to work until people like George Washington handed the keys over to John Adams, or James Buchanan. Well, he fled, basically, and threw the keys over his shoulder to Abraham Lincoln and said, "Good luck." Yeah, thanks for your help with that. That's one of the reasons that the lame duck session was so bad. James Buchanan, by the way, I think is probably the worst president. Somebody asked me that recently. Who is the worst president? I'm going with James Buchanan, who, allowed states to secede from the Union and did nothing. Just biding his time until he gets give it to the next guy and say, good luck with that. All right. So President Obama held his very last news conference yesterday, his final news conference of his presidency. Hey, stop applauding there in the back. I realize. Yeah, I know you're pleased about it as well. You should be. All right, so Barack Obama holds his last press conference, and he talks about the freedom of the press and how important it is, and I'd like to share that with you. It's clip 12, Barack Obama saying how important it is to have freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Clip 12, go.
It goes without saying that essential to that is a free press. That is part of how this place, this country, this grand experiment in self-government has to work. It doesn't work if we don't have a well-informed citizenry. And you are the conduit through which they receive the information about what's taking place in the halls of power. So America needs you, and our democracy needs you. We need you to establish a baseline of facts and evidence that we can use as a starting point for the kind of reasoned and informed debates that ultimately lead to progress. And so my hope is that you will continue with the same tenacity that you showed us to do the hard work of getting to the bottom of stories and getting them right, and to push those of us in power to be the best version of ourselves, and to push this country to be the best version of itself.
And make no mistake, I'm only moving a few blocks down the street, so if you want to show up with your cameras and your microphones on a daily basis to get my input, I'll be readily available. That's kind of the translation there. And if you'd like me to say disparaging things about the current president, Donald Trump, I am more than happy to fill in the blanks on what's your deadline again? Oh, absolutely. I can help you, disparage Donald Trump. That's probably what's going to happen. The hotline number, 888-900-9966. It's unprecedented that a former president would stick around. And trust me, he's a community organizer. This is what he agitates. He stirs the pot. This is what his DNA makes him do, and he's not going anywhere, and he will be involved with the conversation because the press will embrace him, because their love affair with Barack Obama is not going to ebb in any way. Is going to continue to flourish. In fact, it might flourish more because he can be the outspoken critic of Donald Trump and be the de facto leader of the Democratic Party going forward. Let's go to the hotline now. Mike is checking in from Ann Arbor. That's Wham, 1600 territory. Mike, welcome to it.
You had to make me sick this morning having to listen to Obama's voice once more.
Well, he's going to be around, Mike. Trust me, he's just going to be down the street. You know that.
Well, the thing I wanted to talk about this morning was yesterday Tom Price was being skewered by the Democrats, and I think Tom Price should have gotten a copy of Throw Them All Out by Peter Schweizer, a documentary book about all of the profiting the Democrats have done in stock trades. People like Pelosi, Reid, Kerry, and Steny Hoyer, and many other congressmen and
hold
senators.
on. I think the best trade of all time, I remember hearing a story about a woman who invested $1,000 in cattle futures and turned that into $100,000. What was her name? Oh, Hillary Clinton. I remember her. Hillary Clinton did that. What an amazing, mind she had for the market.
Wasn't she supposed to be the first president, female president?
Yeah, I read that somewhere.
What happened to her?
But you know what? I'm going to give her credit today. I'm going to give her credit for she's going to be at the inauguration, unlike, 45 Democrats now or some other, ridiculous bunch who are, they're undercutting the institutions of America by not showing up as far as I'm concerned. At least she has the proper, she's going to show up, and that's the right thing to do. That's what I'm trying to say. Go ahead.
Well, the only thing is the audacity of all these Democrats going after Tom Price when they're all dirty as all hell, with their stock trades. I mean, for God's sakes, people, and really, he should have thrown the book, Throw Them All Out, right on their desk and have them read it before they questioned him.
You know what concerns me, Mike? You don't have an opinion. The next time you call the show, if you don't mind having an opinion when you show up, all right?
Okay.
Greatly appreciate that. Yeah, appreciate that. That's Mike checking in from Ann Arbor. You can do the same, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. You can also go to stevegruber.com. Send us a comment that way. But the easiest way might just be going to the Facebook page of the Steve Gruber Show, which, by the way, you can chime in on the fourth grade teacher from Williamston who is protecting the children by not allowing them to see the Donald Trump inauguration speech because he has a casual use of profanity, and he said degrading things about women and minorities and so on and so forth. And let's be honest, there's some good articles out there. It's gone viral. I've read it in the Detroit News. I was on Fox News myself last night talking about it. It's been picked up by Breitbart, Lansing State Journal. I've seen television stations in both Grand Rapids and Flint and all over, actually, D.C. picked it up as well. So that story's still going strong because it's the second letter from this teacher that was released the day after the election. The second letter that we didn't see first, the second letter that went out the day after the election, saying that how many children were hurting in his classroom, and he had to, just felt he had to pacify them and had to give them Bob Marley quotes, to help them struggle through with their. And so I talked to several parents who had kids in that class. I said, they're 10 years old. Were they really having all this problem and anxiety? He said, no. My kids, the parents I talked to several different kids in the class, nobody was having a problem. The only person having a problem with the election was this teacher himself. What he's missing here is a teachable moment. He could show American history in real time, and he's choosing the wrong lesson. We'll talk about that straight ahead this Thursday on the Steve Gruber Show.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
You never give me my money. You only give me your sympathy.
Thursday, the 19th of January, which means one day left in the Obama presidency. A little more than 12 hours, and it's all over. And we start a new chapter in American history. I'm live in Washington, D.C., here from the Boyle Studios of Hillsdale College. Glad to be here in the Kirby Center on the 4th floor, looking over a good part of Washington this morning. And what a beautiful facility. The city was wonderful this morning. The weather is terrific. Now, for Donald Trump, the election couldn't have worked out any better, of course. He'll be sworn in as the 45th president. But for Hillary Clinton and for Bill Clinton and Chelsea, well, things didn't go quite as they had expected. And now the Clinton Global Initiative is shutting down offices, laying people off. And I wonder what the future of it is. So curious was I decided to call Dan Gainor, the vice president of MRC Business, to join me to discuss that very concern. Dan, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be discussing not only that, but just here we are, as you're saying, less than, a little over a day before, things change in Washington, and they're going to change in a big way, and that I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
So, Dan, you might appreciate this. I've been asking people for this past few days what they wanted to see Donald Trump do in his first 100 days. What's the most important thing you wanted to see him do? So I got a response from a listener yesterday after I was off the air. He sent me a note. He goes, here's what I want Donald Trump to do. I want him to take the oath of office, and I want him to swear to defend the Constitution and so forth. And then for his inauguration speech, here's what I want him to say. I want him to lean into the microphone, clear his throat, look at the crowd, and say, go. And he goes, and then I want to hear machinery moving and people moving and jobs getting started and paychecks getting cashed. And I'm thinking, that is the best answer I've heard yet. Just go, America. You've got it in you. What do you think of that?
I think that's a pretty good answer. For myself, I think the first thing I'd want to see him do is undo. There's been, Obama has led with the phone and the pen. And a lot of the stuff he's done, look, if you want to get stuff done through Congress, that's one thing. But when you just take executive action or regulatory action, I think all these agencies need to be reined in, particularly some of the more malevolent ones like the EPA need to be reined in. And I think he's got an idea that frankly, it's what Democrats do. And the media don't want to talk about it, but it's what certainly seems the direction he's going, which is he's going to hit them on all fronts to the point where they can't possibly cover or stop everything he's doing.
So he's going to use the old military approach of just overwhelm them at every angle.
Yeah, exactly. They just hit them, just a full frontal assault.
Yeah,
and that means some of these agencies aren't going to know what hit them. They're going to have new leaders in there who are saying, no, we're not going to do this anymore. Wait, what? We've been doing that for years. Well, too bad.
Yeah.
And
shock and awe. That's what's going to be
Yep.
shock and awe, but it's going to be financial shock and awe. Overwhelm them, get rid of the regulations, drop the taxes, let the small business engine rev up because that's 90% of our jobs anyway, Dan. I think you're right on it. And that's why I said, when that listener wrote in and said, all I want to hear the president say is go. I think that is an incredible answer. It's the right answer. Meanwhile, though, the Clinton Global Initiative, things aren't the days of sunshine and good rain and great crops seem to be drying up a little bit.
Well, that's it. They're following the same strategy. Go. They're going away.
They're going the other direction.
Yes, but this is what happens when you have basically a slush fund that's designed, as institutional bribery of somebody you think is going to be president of the United States. Oh, when you find out they're never going to be president of the United States. Well, shockingly, a lot of foreign donors are like, well, we were sold a bill of goods. We're not investing in that anymore.
Well, yeah, they've got nothing to offer anymore. I mean, there's no influence to be sold. Bill Clinton's not that interesting, although I actually am concerned about Bill Clinton the last couple of times I've seen him on the podium. I'm not sure he's at 100% anymore, and I'm not saying that to be, mean-spirited.
He seems, more than anything else, I think he seems ill.
That was my point.
And I say that I don't wish the man ill. He's a former president. He served 8 years as president of the United States. I hope he's okay, but he doesn't see. He seemed, worn to a nub on the campaign trail. Sunken cheeks and just not looking very healthy.
And that was my point. He seemed to get confused easily, kind of lost his place. He said some things out there that are like, whose team are you on during the campaign season? I'm like, so it was kind of surprising to me. So I am concerned about him. I don't have any ill will towards Bill Clinton. I'm glad he's not president anymore. I am looking forward to the next 4 years with some optimism. However, having said that, Dan, I will hold this man accountable for what he does as well. I will hold his feet to the fire as well if things don't go the way I would prefer to see them. We'll call him out too.
Well, and I expect, let's face it, Donald Trump, while he ran to the right in his campaign, very unusual in that way. The tradition of American politics is, Democrats run to the left in the primary, run to the center in the general, and Republicans run to the right in the primary, run to the center in the general. Donald Trump ran to the left in the primary and ran to the right in the general, which is, he's carving his own path, and it worked. He got this huge support from evangelical Christians, pro-lifers, people who expect that he will choose a constitutional conservative for Supreme Court justice.
Agreed. I think that he won the way that I talked to people about this weeks in advance. He won the way I expected him. If he was going to win, he did, which was go through the union heartland of America and find those workers that don't feel that it's working for them anymore, that don't feel that people care about them anymore, that are getting their taxes raised, watching the factories go away, watching their jobs go away, looking at their children, wondering what their future is. That's where Donald Trump won, because he connected with the people that were traditionally Democrats and that said, you know what? We've tried that for the last 20 or 30 years. It's not working. We need to try something new, so we're going with this guy.
Well, and he has a chance to reset the whole landscape in a way that honestly no president has in decades, because here he is actively courting the African American community. If he turns around and really does some things to fix urban poverty and deal with African American problems, and turns around and helps rural. I mean, he could alter the Republican coalition in a pretty sizable way. You don't have to do much to change the way things are. 95% of African Americans voted for Barack Obama. If that drops to 85%,
we had good laughs with the black man yesterday who was checking us into the airport, who had voted for Donald Trump and said he gets a lot of grief in the break room, but he laughed. He goes, I'm looking for something different, and I voted for him, and he was proud of it.
Yeah, well, I say, that's 13 million people. If you change, an election where 3 million people, if you change like 10% of the African-American vote and switch it, that's a turn of pretty much
That'd have been the election right there. You know, Dan, we
Yeah.
have to leave it right there, no question. But I'll leave you with one more point that gentleman made to us. He goes, those people in the break room are rooting for him to fail. He goes, that's rooting for America to fail. He goes, I just can't do that. Dan, thanks for stopping in. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks. You take care.
There you have it. It's the Steve Gruber Show live from Washington, D.C. Back after this.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
Waking up and Dr. B who stepped across the line. When the lights watch it took control, the first one of its kind. So listen to your radio almost each and every night. 'Cause if you know it, sure you won't get
All right, 45 after on this Thursday. You know, it just feels good to be in Washington. It does. Feels good to be in Washington on this particular couple of days. We'll be here for a couple of days, and after the inauguration tomorrow and the parade and so forth, we will be heading, Ivy and I will be with one of our children to a couple of the balls. And I'm telling you, the ladies look spectacular. How lucky did I get by having two of the most beautiful women on the planet escorting me to the ball? I feel like I should be riding in the pumpkin, you know, like Cinderella. It's kind of the way I feel. Magic dust, you know. But it's going to be a special time. And here's the thing. You don't get to do it all the time. We were invited to come. We decided to say yes. And why would you? You know, and I was thinking about some conversations that I had heard here recently. Dick Cheney being one of them. I heard him on a conversation on TV. And he was asked if Donald Trump called, would he go to work for Donald Trump? He said, of course I would. He's the president of the United States. And he said that, and by the same token, if Barack Obama had called, I would have gone to work for Barack Obama. He said, but surprisingly, Barack Obama never called me. I can't believe that Barack Obama didn't call Dick Cheney, but that's the way, you know, it works. If, you know, you have the, excuse me, the president of the United States, no matter what your leanings, you go to work. Now, as this is all going on the eve of the presidential inauguration, over 300 U.S. mayors are convening for the 85th winter meeting. Among those will be Mayor Marcus Muhammad from Benton Harbor, Michigan. He is going to be one of the folks on hand, and he's joining me on the program today. Mr. Mayor, welcome to it.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the warm welcome.
Now, mayors across this country, like so many other municipalities, face challenges. I was in my car here not long ago, and I happened to be driving through Indiana, and I heard a radio station from Fort Wayne, not too far from where you are, and there was a comment about how that city was $500 million in debt, and it struck me, still does, and how stunning that was. And it occurred to me that cities of all sizes across America, one of the big challenges is debt. Is that something that you find yourself dealing with as well?
Well, actually, the city of Benton Harbor has experienced debt. We were under emergency management, as you probably know, for 6 years under Governor Snyder's administration. However, we just received our audit report, and we came out with no material findings, and we are not running any deficits. So the city of Benton Harbor is on the mend, and our surplus is strong. So we're moving forward. However, we do have consolidated debt where we have to pay back so much per year because we received a loan from the state. So, you know, when you're dealing with municipalities, numbers can get tricky. However, our operating fund balance is strong, and we're moving forward.
So the good news is I think the term you use is on the mend, and that is good news. But as you look forward, you probably have the same challenges as other cities, being infrastructure or housing, making sure you've got some jobs, good jobs for people. Healthcare is always a concern, the education, and obviously everybody's been able to witness what has happened in Flint, so there are concerns about making sure that everything's safe for everyone. Make sure it's a safe community as far as that sort of thing goes. Are these all the things that you're looking at when you get together as the mayors convene?
Well, I think to your point, one of the reasons the record attendance, this is the highest attendance in the history of the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C., and I think it's due to the fact of all of the looming issues and problems that infrastructure issues, issues with water, et cetera, et cetera. You know, and as Bill Ford was doing a presentation, you know, on mobility, I thought about the great cities of Rome and how if we can't save the cities, the decline is inevitable.
Yeah, they could pull us down. They could become an anchor on the whole system, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Let me ask you this. We're on with Mayor Marcus Muhammad from Benton Harbor, Michigan. Let me ask you this, sir. As you see the changing of the guard in Washington happening tomorrow as President Trump will take over the reins of government, what are your feelings? Do you have optimism? Do you have reserved optimism? Are you concerned? What are your thoughts going in?
Well, you know, being an independent, where I'm not saddled down with partisan and party politics, or some have said politricks. I'm looking for good ideas. I'm watching, I'm observing, I'm listening, which is one of the reasons I came to D.C., of course, not just for the conference, but the inaugural, you know, to do two things, you know, both listen and learn. And I have done both. So, you know, I'm not looking at President-elect Trump with a crooked eye. I'm looking with an objective eye. And I think that the gravity of the office will kick in, and hopefully he'll be able to find some ways to govern, pull people together, and do what he missioned to do, which was make America great again.
It seems like you're open-minded, which I applaud you for that, because it seems that even in his transition here, he has reached out most only to a lot of African Americans, and they have gotten a lot of grief. Steve Harvey comes to mind. I mean, just visiting with the man, a lot of grief. But I'll give you 30 seconds for the last word of what you think 2017 will be like for Benton Harbor and maybe for America. Last word for you, sir.
Well, I think the city of Benton Harbor is a microcosm of the macro, where, you know, issues of jobs, issues of unemployment, issues of infrastructure, and as we rebuild America city by city, it's going to take people working together, people collaborating, people respecting differences, however, being able to work together. And that's regardless to creed, class, color, religion, fraternity, right wing, left wing.
I agree. I agree, sir. We have to leave it there.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me, gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
And it is Thursday, the 19th of January. Glad to have you on board today. Coming to you live from Boyle Studios, part of Hillsdale College in the Kirby Center in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill. A historic time to be in Washington. And by the way, we have a couple of partners to help make this possible. Wycoff Wellness, Dr. John Wycoff and his team, a partner on our project to show up here in Hillsdale and have a ground level view to tell you what it looks like on the ground here. Also, Like Law. When you need a trusted law firm built on integrity and experience, contact Like Law. That's Lyke, Like Law. And she also helping us out, being a partner with us here. And DTE Energy, providing safe, reliable natural gas to businesses across Michigan. DTE Energy, know your own power. All right, so we've been talking the last few days about this fourth grade teacher, Brett Mater, in Williamston, Michigan, who sent out a note to parents here at the beginning of the week saying that he was not going to allow his fourth grade students to watch Donald Trump's inauguration speech. He said he'd let them see the inauguration itself, but after that he's going to cut it off because of Donald Trump's poor treatment of women and minorities and the disabled and his casual use of profanity and so on and so forth. And that he was doing his he was following his professional responsibility to protect these kids. And so I posted these letters that were sent to me by parents, and boy, has the world gone crazy on this when Ivy's been following it with me as well. And to say that it has gone viral, maybe a bit of an understatement, but people really reacting strongly.
They are, and I think it makes sense that they're doing that. It is a bit crazy that he has put his ideology into this classroom, into these letters that he sent home to parents, and it's unfortunate because it really is an opportunity to teach these kids, hey, regardless of your political opinion, this is history. It
is. And the point that I've made, and I think you might agree with this, is he can watch the inauguration and the speech in real time. He can teach fourth graders about history in real time. And this amazing and wonderful thing that we have in America, which is the peaceful transfer of power that before Washington handed the baton over to John Adams didn't really exist in the world. We don't have people killing each other. We don't have coups. We don't have people taking over. We have the peaceful transfer of power. And let's be honest, Donald Trump isn't going to go out there and drop profanity, on Pennsylvania Avenue during his inauguration speech. It's just not going to happen.
No, that would be absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, come on. It seems like the mainstream media always puts out the worst of people because, that's what makes headlines.
That's what sells, right?
And that's what sells. But the fact of the matter is this man has done incredible things for women and for minorities, and has created jobs.
Well, look at the pushback he's getting. Just people like Steve Harvey, for example, went to Trump Tower this week. He's just got incredible blowback, really. So if you're a black man and you go meet with the president-elect to talk about everything, you're just going to get hammered by folks in Hollywood. Now, yesterday we met that African-American man that checked us in for Delta Airlines. Great guy, funny. Smart guy, funny guy.
Yes.
And he's got this I voted thing. And it struck us both because he said, yeah, I get a lot of grief in the break room from people. I can't believe you voted for Donald Trump. He said, listen, I wanted something different, and I didn't like what I was seeing on the other side. And he said, I want Donald Trump to succeed because rooting for Donald Trump to fail, and he says people in the break room say that to him all the time, he says like rooting for all of us to fail.
No, absolutely. And that's kind of the ridiculousness of it all. I want Donald Trump to fail. Well, think about what you're saying for a second. And going back about, this teacher and education, I mean, education really should be a forum that is free of ideology and a place that anybody can speak their opinion, talk about ideas, really begin to develop their thoughts about the world.
Well, and I want to go back, and I agree with what you're saying, but I want to go back to it. I was appalled by the letter that went out this week, but then we got a second email that was actually sent the day after the election on November 9th, where he talked about how upset many of these children, fourth graders, 10-year-olds, were in his classroom about the outcome of the election, and they were scared, and he had to comfort them. And I'm thinking, I don't think so. How many fourth graders are that in tune with the election? Probably not many. And ones that were truly scared and upset, I don't believe it. The person that was upset with the election was Brett Mateer, the teacher himself.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And even further, I believe he goes on to say something about, that it's hard for him to find diversity in students in Williamston, where
apparently that community is just a little too white for him. I mean, that's the takeaway, is that he has to look awfully close to find uniqueness in children, and then he goes on to discuss skin color of other people, and it's like, wow, you're really saying you can't find uniqueness in children because they're too white for you? I mean, how? Well, and that's a horrible thing to say.
Absolutely, and every child is unique. Despite any of that. I mean, take all of that away. Okay, let's, be blind here for a moment. And each student is unique in their own right.
Absolutely.
And so for him to say that was just absolutely ridiculous.
And if I was a teacher, if I was a parent and I had a kid in his class, you can't find uniqueness in my son or my daughter, really, because they don't have a different religion or they don't have a different skin color, which is exactly what he wrote in the letter. And the letter is published, by the way, on the Steve Gruber Show Facebook page. You can go look at it. Kathy Hoekstra, by the way, from watchdog.org and the Washington Examiner, have been doing some great work on this story. I've Been talking back and forth with her. She's coming up a little bit later here this hour, so we'll talk a little bit more in depth about what she has to say. But it concerns me. I mean, it concerns me because you have, parents that have children here that they're saying, well, your child isn't unique enough. All right, Jennifer is on the line. I'm surprised to hear that. Jennifer, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for taking my call. You just described what's wrong with the press, in addition to the teachers. But the reason that I called, my take on all these congressmen, senators, people in the House of Representatives that refuse to honor Donald Trump in his swearing in today need to resign from office. And the reason for that is they have issued an ultimatum to the people that have put them in office that they will not represent those that voted for Donald Trump. That's their view by taking the stand that they have. They should be open-minded. They should be willing to work with this man. I can't tell you how I choked down 8 years of watching the man that sits in the White House today destroy this country.
Yeah, you make a great point, Jennifer. I got to leave it there, but you make a great point, and that is this. How do these members of Congress that refuse to show up because they don't think that Donald Trump is a legitimate president, how do they represent the members and the constituents in their district
They have
that
already
voted for
issued
Trump?
the ultimatum to the people that sent them to office. They will not represent them because they do not honor their president.
Thank you, Jennifer, as always. It's 14 after. You're listening to The Steve Gruber Show.
Genuine Michigan common sense on display every day.
Now it's a legal matter, baby. You got me on the run. It's a legal matter, baby. A legal matter from now on. My mind's lost in a household.
It's 18 after. Glad to have you with us today. Took the Traveling Road Show with us this time. Apparently the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus is closing down, but the Steve Gruber Show certainly is not. We'll take this show anywhere, anytime, any place, as long as it's newsworthy and interesting to you. Today, live in Washington, D.C., as we count down. This is the last full day in office for Barack Obama. This is the last full day in office for President Barack Obama. Go ahead and take a moment. Wipe the tear from your eye. Whatever the tear's there for, whether it's joy or despair, it's the last full day because tomorrow, Donald John Trump will become the 45th president of the United States. The man that they said couldn't happen, wouldn't happen, would never happen, was not a serious candidate. And in fact, after he was elected, and the people from the Young Turks and all the people had their meltdowns. After that, they said, well, his transition is chaos, and it's this and it's that. And no, actually, it was one of the smoothest transitions, and he selected his cabinet at a clip faster than at any time in my lifetime, I believe, selected qualified people. And now those confirmation hearings are starting. And, of course, the word controversial is attached to every person he's put up. And, when I was doing journalism, when I was a working reporter for NBC News, we were told not to use words like controversial, scheme. There's certain words that were prejudicial, words you did not use, and that if you did use them, they usually were struck from your story. They were taken out. And yet it seems to me that those sorts of qualifiers are attached to anything Republican, anything Trump, which creates this problem of total mistrust in the media. I mean, ask yourself, do you trust the media? Seriously. And if you want to join the conversation today, the number is 888-900-9966. 888-900-9966. My question, I suppose, to you is this. For those of you that listen to this program regularly or ones like it, how much of your news comes from a program like this where we sit and talk about the different issues of the day and have an analysis and a conversation about it? Or do you go to, do you watch the NBC Nightly News or ABC or CBS? Do you get your news from cable? Do you get your news and your snippets from new media like the internet? Where does your information come from? Because I can tell you the old media is in full-on panic. Washington Post and the New York Times, despite their claims of doing so well, when Donald Trump says, listen, they're doing lousy and they're about to lose a bunch of people. Oh, no, we're doing great. We've got online subscriptions and this and that and so on. They're making layoffs. Both of those papers are staring at considerable layoffs in 2017 because their product isn't trusted by a vast majority of the consumers out there that would be the consumers that would buy the product. And if you have consumers that don't trust the product and aren't going to buy the product goes away. It's simple supply and demand. It's economics 101. I mean, and that's the way it works. And so when you look at what's going on in the media today, and you look at the way that they're covering things, and they use terms like controversial. Every pick from Donald Trump is a controversial selection. And, and they show the Democrats having their sit-ins, and they spend more time focused on John Lewis, an inconsequential congressman from the state of Georgia, than they do on other much more important issues. It tells you about their approach and their take and their bent on the news of the day. The hotline number, 888-900-9966. Matt standing by. Matt, welcome to it.
Yeah, I get my news from the radio and cable TV. I don't know how everybody else does it, but, they better be careful with Trump on the outside of the fences.
Matt, do you think we should have free Play-Doh available for all adults that aren't feeling well? I mean, we could have government Play-Doh. What do you think?
Well, they could have that at the FEMA safe spaces, and then therapy dogs and counselors on the outside.
Now think about this. Maybe they could be the safe, like bounce houses for adults, like the big, blow-up bounce houses that are safe spaces where nobody's going to get hurt, and you can bounce around and everything's soft and safe, and everybody's okay, and afterwards we can all hug, okay?
Yeah, group hug.
Lord. Yeah, you got it. Thank you, Matt. The hotline number is 888-900-9966. I think that maybe everybody should get, a container of Play-Doh sent to their house, courtesy of the United States government. So when you're not feeling well, you can all have the Play-Doh and you can have your cry room, maybe some tissues and Play-Doh. I mean, seriously, here's a news flash, everybody. In the real world, there are winners and there are losers. And they don't hand out participation ribbons when you get handed your backside and whatever the competition may be. Do you want your doctor, the person that's going to perform surgery on you, to have been pushed along because, their grades were okay and we didn't want to hurt his feelings, so we let him become a doctor anyway? And the answer is, of course not. So why would we accept that from anybody else? I mean, seriously, why would we accept that from anybody else? Let's get to Jerry. He's standing by on the hotline. Jerry, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, good morning, Steve. First of all, I get my news basically from Fox. I'm a conservative, and when I want a good laugh, I'll turn on CNN, particularly after Trump was elected. That was totally hilarious. Those people had no idea what to say, how to react. It was totally amazing. And watching those people here and there, now and then, ever since he was elected, it's just amazing how those people do not get what America is wanting to stand for and want to be great again. It's just amazing to me.
And actually, Jerry, it goes beyond that. They don't know what America is. Now, you live in Lansing, Michigan, and when I grew up around Lansing, there were 7 General Motors automobile plants. Half of those remain now. The landscape has changed. These people have not stood in Elkhart, Indiana, or Lansing, Michigan, or Davenport, Iowa. They don't even know what it is, Jerry. Thanks for checking in. That's the problem. The disconnect between those folks and the real world is breathtaking, frankly. And if they took time to get to know places like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and know the people and what they care about there, maybe, just maybe, they'd have done better on the 8th of November. But they didn't even bother to stop by for a cursory hello. It's 25 after on the Steve Gruber Show.
Midwestern Common Sense.
When the lights go down in the city and the sun.
All right, it's Thursday, just the last full day of the Barack Obama presidency. Just enjoy that for the remainder of the day. No matter what happens today, just remember today is the last full day of Barack Obama's presidency. All the big folks coming into town. Ivy and I are here, brought our daughter as well. We're going to watch the inauguration, got great seats for that. Plus, we'll be going to some of the balls. one of the folks that we've gotten to know since we've been doing this radio show and greatly appreciate and respect because of his opinion and his experience, former Congressman Pete Hoekstra, the Shillman Senior Fellow at the Investigative Project on Terrorism, and the former chair of the House Intel Committee, among many other things. I could give you his whole resume, but then we'd be out of time. Pete, welcome to the program.
Hey, great to be with you. Welcome to Washington.
What a beautiful time of the year. I mean, the weather couldn't be better for the inauguration, quite honestly. You've been here for these things before, but it's ideal right now, isn't it?
Absolutely. Diane and I, we drove from Michigan yesterday, and, we had some fog and mist in that, but really no snow from Michigan to Washington. How often does that happen in January? So it should be a warmer day tomorrow. It may rain, but it's better than brutal cold.
Well, let me ask you this, because you've been through this. Something like 46 members of Congress are skipping the inauguration because, darn it, he's not a legitimate president or some such nonsense. Every U.S. senator's going. Even Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton will be there right up front. So they're doing the right thing. But what do you say to these members of Congress that are refusing to attend out of some misguided sense of something or other? What do you make of it, sir?
It's very, very disappointing. This is a celebration of the American dream. It's the celebration of, our process. It's bigger than Donald Trump. It's bigger than Barack Obama. This is about the rest of the world looking at America and seeing the most powerful country on the globe going through a peaceful transfer of power. At 12, shortly after 12 o'clock, the guy with the football steps from behind Barack Obama and steps behind Donald Trump. And, it's an amazing sight. It's just really, really disappointing. It's petty. It is absolutely
I think that's
petty.
Petulant and petty, I think, is a good way to put it. Now, we are on the last full day of Barack Obama's presidency. I know that brings a little bit of a smile to your face because we're ready to try something different around here, that's for sure. But something happened yesterday, and I want your take on this, and I want you to put on your House Intel Committee hat on this. But he just gave a get-out-of-jail-free card to a former terrorist, Mr. Lopez Rivera, Oscar Lopez Rivera, who was part of an organization, the FALN, that was an active terrorist organization from the mid-'70s to the mid-'80s, and cut his sentence short by, 35 years and sent him home? These people killed police officers and others. What do you make of this?
That pardon, the commutation of Chelsea Manning's sentence, it's awful. It just sends a signal. Okay, let's take a look at either one of these. I mean, for people who ally themselves and, whether they're in Afghanistan or Iraq or anything like that, and they decide whether they're going to partner with the United States, like in the case with Chelsea Manning, they're going to have second thoughts about that, because after Chelsea Manning released, 750,000 documents, the Taliban went on a killing spree in Afghanistan, killing anybody that, was remotely mentioned in any of these documents as maybe having worked with the Americans. This terrorist from Puerto Rico. I mean, here we are. We're concerned about terrorism. We're having increasing acts of terrorism here in the United States by radical Islamists, and now we're pardoning them. And it's like, it makes absolutely no sense. We're sending exactly the wrong signal to terrorists. We're sending the wrong signal to people who are hacking into our data systems and releasing the materials. The only thing I can say is, yes, there's only about, just slightly over 24 hours, but it's how much more damage can this president do in the last 24 to 30 hours before he leaves office?
Well, and that's the question. So let me ask you, obviously, you're looking for a new agenda starting, immediately. What do you think should be the number one priority? I think that Donald Trump's going to work excessive hours to get things rolling here. What are some of the things you want to see him start doing shortly after he concludes his inauguration speech tomorrow?
What he's going to have to do, I think, number one, he's going to have to put his national security team to work. He's going to have a different approach towards ISIS and radical jihadism. So it's, start setting off in a new direction on foreign policy. It's hard. It takes a long time to just, move the ship of state in a slightly different direction or a significantly different direction. Then it's about creating an environment where we can get this economy going much quicker. That's about tax reform. It's about regulatory reform and those types of things. And then probably the third issue, it's, starting that very, very complicated process of taking apart Obamacare and replacing it with a new approach on health care. So, if he can get moving on those three things, which he will do.
Well, there's no question. You've been around Washington for a long time. You were there 9 terms as a congressman, if memory serves properly. And at my age, I'm lucky if it does, but I'll go with that. But here's what I'm going to say. He has done more, Donald Trump has, as a president-elect prior to taking office and impacting policy, whether it was the announcement yesterday that Boeing will, in fact, lower the price of Air Force One, or the fact that U.S. Steel is hiring 10,000 employees, and the list goes on and on. Have you ever seen a president-elect that has so many things underway and so many things going on and getting things accomplished before even taking the oath of office, as we have seen with Donald Trump?
No, really, almost immediately after his election, this guy started having an impact, and it was, focused on the jobs area and those kinds of things. But no, he's had a tremendous amount of impact, but I don't think we've seen anything yet, Steve. Once he actually gets the title of President of the United States, Congress is going to be in for they may call it a rude awakening. He is going to press if they go home on Thursday or Friday. He's going to ask, why aren't you here on Saturday? We haven't made America great yet. We haven't passed tax reform. We haven't done this. You haven't confirmed my appointees to various cabinet and other positions. Why are you going home? Stay in Washington. I think it's going to be exciting for the American people to see. I know that when congressmen go home on Thursday night and they go home for the weekend, they work hard.
Yes.
The American people think that they're going home, for a 3-day work week or 3-day weekend. That's not what they do. But Donald Trump is going to challenge them to stay in Washington and do the legislative work that he will believe needs to get done.
And I think that's right. And I'd like to talk to you more about all of this, but unfortunately we are we're out of time here today, Congressman. But I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Enjoy your time.
Well, I'm sure I'll run into you over at the Michigan Ball and elsewhere. I greatly appreciate it. Pete Hoekstra, everybody here on the program. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay, we'll do it. Thank you.
All right, there you have it. Pete Hoekstra here on the program. Coming up next, a newly minted Congressman, Jack Bergman. General Jack Bergman will be here with me on the Steve Gruber Show. Sit tight.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
45 after on this Thursday, and I'm stuck on this thought for the day, but I know that it brings pleasure to many of you, which is today is the last full day in office for President Barack Obama. This is his last full day on the job. And I don't actually think he's golfing. I think he's actually probably around doing something somewhat productive, packing his bags and moving down the street, doing something unprecedented, which is to stay in Washington. My next guest, fairly new to Washington, General Jack Bergman, has a newly minted congressman from Michigan's 1st District who a year and a half ago was considered to be a dark horse, but he comes riding in, and suddenly here he is, elected at the age of 69 to the first office he ever ran for. In studio with me here at the Boyle Studios of Hillsdale College. General, welcome.
Good morning, Steve. Great to be here.
You've only been here a short period of time. What do you make of it so far?
Well, it's a fast pace. When you come here, there's really not a whole lot of warm-up time. You don't play practice games. You basically put on your suit in this case, get sworn in, get your committee assignments, and get to work. Now,
part of your campaign when you were running for office is if you want to get something done, you send a Marine. That was kind of your pitch. Do you think you said the pace is hard. You're almost 70 years old. You're fit as a fiddle, though, from what I can tell. So you're a man who's up to the task. And it looks like the man who is going to be president afternoon tomorrow, who's also 70. Looks like he puts in about 20 hours a day as well. Looks like you two might be well matched.
Well, there's I can't speak for the president-elect, but I've been blessed with a high energy level, and as my mother would say, you got a good intellect. Use it, develop it. But the point is, at this point in life, I can look back 7 decades and figure out some of the things that worked and some things that haven't.
Now, you bring to mind my mother because she was a school teacher, and she said to me oftentimes, and I think this applies to Washington currently, whenever I might have been slightly out of line, which was, of course, rarely, she would look at me and she would say, clean up your act. And that applied to a variety of things, whether it was school or maybe I wasn't sitting up straight. And when we look at Washington, I think that applies. Clean up your act. I think that's what's going to happen. Now, people are frankly fed up with politicians that go to Washington, never return to their home districts, politicians that figure out how to line their own pockets, politicians that make a lot of promises during the campaign, and yet when it's all said and done, what are they doing? They're just out collecting more money to campaign again. That needs to change.
Well, it does. I mean, we've got a job. We were sent here by the representatives, in my case, the 1st District, to get some things done for them. We know that we need jobs. We know that we need a better economic situation across the country, but especially in the 1st District. We know there's some specific projects that I need to work on. We talked about that on the campaign trail. Number 1, Sioux Locks. We need it to get done. We need it to be renovated, upgraded, because now it's not only economy, it's national security.
And you mentioned that during the campaign. See, people don't realize there's only one long lock in there, 1,000 feet long or whatever it is. And if that ever went down, shipping on the Great Lakes, the St. Lawrence Seaway, the way we move goods throughout the upper part of this country, people don't realize how key the Sioux Locks are here in Michigan to commerce in this nation.
Well, they're key to commerce around the country because the ore that we ship or the goods we ship through the locks could end up in Texas or California or some place where somebody's running a manufacturing facility would have to shut it down. So it could cause an economic hard times around the country.
I think what you could compare it to, I think the Sioux Locks are as imperative to American economics as the Panama Canal is to the rest of the world in many respects.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, I think that's one way to look at it. So as you come into office then, fast pace as you said, obviously the last part of the equation is put together tomorrow after Donald Trump takes office. What are some of the things you're looking to hope to be part of accomplishing in that first 100 days of the Trump administration? What do you want to see?
Well, let's look at the bottom line is money. And we just got our committee assignments last week, and I'm on the budget committee. So
it's a good place to be.
It's a great place to be because you start right at the bottom and figuring out where the dollars are, where they've been spent, but most importantly, where we need to spend them in the future. We're the architects of that framework.
Yeah, because you look at what has happened over the last 8 years. And people say, well, Barack Obama ran up the debt by $8 or $10 trillion. Not really. Barack Obama doesn't spend the money. You do. Congress does, and you're new to it, so I'm obviously not, pointing my finger at you, but I'm saying it's the House of Representatives that controls the purse strings. And if people are going to complain about the debt in this country, which I do here on this program, we have to come back and say, guys, we got to get this under control.
Well, yeah, we can't just assume that the level of spending we did in every department last year is the baseline for next year. I've talked about it on the campaign trail, and I still believe it. We need to go to some form of zero-based budgeting to begin not only to slow, we need to zero out the growth rate in some of these areas because we are, by just nature of how you have to spend your money, we'll add in a couple areas.
Yeah, but as you talk about some of those areas, what I was going to say was one of the places that Donald Trump is talking about adding and spending more is the military. Obviously, that's important to you and to national security. So how do you balance, you've got to trim the budget, but you can't trim the Navy and the Air Force?
Well, yes, you can, because coming from inside the military, I had a responsibility for about $1 billion budget annually. And I know that there are ways that we can get more out of that $1 billion from a security standpoint and not suffer in readiness.
So there's no substitute for experience, and your experience in that realm then, and now being on the budget committee may well help trim some budgets while making the U.S. military stronger and more fleet of foot, if you will.
That is correct, because I know where we've had some successes based upon my time in uniform.
Well, and there you go. We're with General Jack Bergman here, the new member of Congress, the new congressman from Michigan's 1st District, which is the UP in the northern half of the lower. I'll give you 30 seconds here. You've been here for a couple of weeks. I'll give you the final word, your last thoughts of where you think we go here for the next few weeks, few months, your first term.
Well, what's going to happen tomorrow is going to be an example that we set worldwide, which is the peaceful transfer of power. People around the world aren't used to that in some, depending on where their country is.
Sure.
We are the example. We will show that to the world. And now this next 100 days, budget, getting the administration, getting their feet on the ground, getting Congress, getting the Senate, everybody pretty much up and on speed to work together, crossing lines that need to be crossed to get things done.
And put America first. That's where I come down. Put America first.
Absolutely.
General Jack Bergman, a pleasure, sir. Thank you for stopping into the studios today. Greatly appreciate that. It's 52 after on this Thursday. You're listening to The Steve Gruber Show. Hey, coming up this weekend, a big event at the Wycoff Wellness Center. A great big event with Dr. John Wycoff, the biggest event of the year. And Dr. John Wycoff joining us to talk real quickly about it. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Steve. An exciting day, and we're going to have an exciting day here at Wycoff Wellness in East Lansing this Saturday, the 21st, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Ring in a healthy new year. Get on that path to health and wellness. Come down and join us for our open house. Some great seminars, thousands of dollars of giveaways, once a year specials on all of our products, great service packages. Meet me, meet my staff. Take those steps to get those New Year's resolutions intact, move forward, and get healthy and well naturally.
And the good news is save a lot of money this weekend because, like I said, it's the biggest event of the year. It's a chance to meet you and your staff, as you mentioned, but save some money, and that's important.
It is a big deal. People can really get engaged. You don't have to be a patient of our practice to purchase any of our quality supplements, either in the store or online at wycoffwellness.com. But you can come down, have some refreshments, talk to me. We've got some great vendors. We've got some great people, including Dr. Ed Rozek, giving a great talk. He's a local author about health and wellness. It'll be a lot of fun. Invite everyone to come down. It's going to be a beautiful day Saturday, 9 to 4 p.m., Wycoff Wellness, 1226 Michigan Avenue in East Lansing.
And you can find out more at wycoffwellness.com, wycoffwellness.com. Dr. John Wycoff, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy.
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, my friends, 6 minutes after the hour on this Thursday, the final full day of the Barack Obama presidency. This is it. It's come down to this. There are a few grains left in the hourglass, and they are running out, well, quite quickly, to say the least. It's all over except the crying, if you will. Coming tomorrow, the inauguration, and today I'm coming to you live from Washington, D.C. I'm in the Boyle Studios, part of Hillsdale College's Kirby Center, right here on Capitol Hill. So here we are in the nation's capital to give you an idea of, well, of all the goings-on right here as we get ready for the inauguration. 1 million people expected to turn out. Now, that's a smaller crowd than turned out for Barack Obama's first inauguration in 2009, but larger they are expecting than his second inauguration, so somewhere in the middle. And, of course, there'll be a lot of protesters and folks that just can't seem to come to terms with the fact that, yes, Donald Trump won the presidency with 57% of the electoral vote back on November the 8th. People still unwilling to accept that, including some school teachers, like a fourth grade teacher we've talked about here on the program the last couple of days from Williamston, Michigan, who's going to shield his children and not allow them to see the inauguration speech because he's concerned about the casual use of profanity by Donald Trump and the fact that he says Donald Trump maligned women and minorities and disabled people. So therefore, he's going to protect the children. He did that in part earlier in another email to parents by quoting Bob Marley. Apparently, Bob Marley is a role model, but the President of the United States cannot be trusted to show to children. It seems to me that he's made a decision clearly that he shall be the one who decides whether or not the children see history in real time. And the thing that he's missing there is he could teach history in real time. Watch the peaceful transfer of power, which is unique to America, as you know. It's an incredible opportunity to share that with these students. I mean, they're 10. All right, they're 10 years old. Watch the peaceful transfer of power, and share with these 10-year-olds. It's one of those things in grade school that, would have an impression on children. The whole inner workings of Washington. But in the meantime, if you'd like to find out more, go to the Steve Gruber Show Facebook page. We broke that story a couple of days ago. It's since been picked up by Fox News, NBC, ABC, Breitbart. I was on Fox Business last night talking about it. A lot of folks around the country not impressed with a fourth-grade teacher censoring the inauguration speech of the incoming President Donald Trump. Next into the studio, though, he just came and sat down. Congressman Tim Walberg, good friend of ours, friend of the program, talk to him on a regular basis, and he looks spectacular. Congressman, welcome to the studio.
Good morning. Good to be with you, and good to be face-to-face.
We don't get that opportunity very often.
No, and it's probably good on your part. You don't have to look at me face-to-face, but glad to be here at Hillsdale College, and Hillsdale's in my district. We're proud to have it here in Washington, too.
Kind of a parade of congressmen here. Just had General Jack Bergman here.
I'm walking down the street, in fact.
Yeah, and your colleague, Bill Huizenga, will be here in a minute. But obviously, you guys have gotten started. 115th Congress, you're underway. A lot of things going on. On the Senate side, of course, the confirmation hearings. What are you guys focusing on as you get ready for the new president?
Well, we're focusing on getting everything in place for repeal and replace of Obamacare. That was our effort last week to get the budget resolution. All that was really an empty shell of a bill that allows it to be used as a tool to get us into a reconciliation resolution, which allows us to get the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, ending of funding for things like Planned Parenthood, all in one document that is filibuster proof. It goes directly to the president once the Senate passes with 51 votes.
Now, you and I have talked about this a couple of times, and you've corrected me, I think is a fair way to put it, because I said, listen, it looks to me in Michigan that the Republicans weren't ready, didn't have a plan in place. And then you said, no, we've got a lot of things in place and ready to go. And then I see Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky roll out and say, we've got the whole thing ready. We're just not going to take the cover off it quite yet until we're ready. But apparently there's a lot going on, a lot of things being put into place that we're not all privy to yet. Is that fair to say? There's some things that are ready to go that we haven't been fully informed of.
That's fair to say. And even some of us who will be on the committee, which I sit, Energy and Commerce, that will be doing the main heavy lifting for that proposal. Don't know everything. There's going to be some things rolled out that have been in negotiations with President Trump, Mike Pence, our leadership, Paul Ryan, and Mitch McConnell. We'll be talking about that next week at our annual retreat, where we get away and plan and work things together. So no, it's exciting, but the same principles will be there to make it a patient-centered effort where we give choice to individuals that discuss with their medical provider what they best need, produce competition through expanding our health savings accounts, allowing purchase of health care across state lines, do tort reform to get at frivolous lawsuits, do something different but still keep the ability to have pre-existing conditions covered. We'll probably do it through a high-risk pool, and then deal with those 26-year-olds and under that want to stay on their parents' policies. So those are some things that the people like.
Well, those are key. I mean, you've laid out a whole list of things there that are very important to people. And Donald Trump has said, and this got some pushback from some so-called conservative circles, if you will. He says, I want coverage for everyone. I want some sort of coverage for everyone, which I don't think, it may not be what's in the Constitution, which is where you get some of that pushback, but I think Americans in general agree that there should be some baseline of coverage, a safety net, if you will, so people have some base coverage, and they don't necessarily go bankrupt because they get cancer or they get sick. People agree with that. But on the same token, they don't think that they should get the Cadillac, if you will. There should be baseline coverage, protection for everybody. Is that something you agree with?
That's what I agree with. I think that's also what Donald Trump was saying. I'd be surprised if he weren't.
Right.
I don't think he was elected to have a one-size-fits-all plan and a promise for everybody, but the opportunity there and choices. You can make the choices. Right now, you make your choice based upon what the government tells you, and then you go to the doctor's office, you pull out your insurance card, and he can't take it. Or the deductible or the out-of-pocket expense is so high.
No, that's what I face. I mean, I've had my insurance changed 3 times as a result of Obamacare, and that you never know what your plan is. It's going to be the same. It's not really the same. Before we hit the first break here, though, what about the money? How do we keep our federal spending under control and the debt under control by doing all of these things?
Well, that's the whole process. That's why the comprehensive tax reform comes into play. How we grow the economy. We give incentives to a small business that employ about 85% of our workforce. Give them tax breaks that will allow them to expand their businesses, to invest, to develop capital, to hire new employees. You get the people, as you know, very well know, get the people into the economy, purchasing, saving, investing, buying, you name it. All of a sudden the economy starts to turn around. It worked under Clinton. It worked under Reagan, of course, and it will work under Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's certainly, at least that's what we're hoping, and we're looking forward to it, because the more the business of this country runs, the better off we all are. We're with Congressman Tim Walberg. We're going to take a quick break here and get into some of the other priorities that we might see Donald Trump focus on in the first 100 days. Coming to you live from Washington, D.C., this is a special edition of the Steve Gruber Show.
Getting your day started with news from around the state and around the world. Common Sense Radio. This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Princess knew before you. That's what I said now. Princess who adore you. Just go ahead now. One last diamonds in his pockets.
Before the break, you mentioned before the break, Mike Pence handling different things. I picked up on this theme, and maybe you could elaborate just a bit on this before we get back to some of the other topics. But it seems to me, no matter what people think of Donald Trump, it seems that Mike Pence is well thought of and well respected and well liked on both sides of the aisle. Am I picking that up right?
Yeah, highly respected by Democrats, Republicans, House and Senate. He knows how to do the work without being abrasive. He's a solid guy. He keeps priorities, and he's able to have been a true conservative. When I came to Congress, he was the president of or chairman of our Republican Study Committee, arguably the conservative wing of the House Republican Conference. No, he's a solid guy and
hard worker.
Oh, hard worker, doesn't give up. Can be a team player in such a way that he motivates the team to do right.
Well, obviously, Donald Trump saw something in him that he wasn't seeing in Chris Christie when he moved Chris Christie out and Mike Pence in to run the transition, which is run. Regardless of the sniping from the left, seems to have run more smoothly and more effectively than any transition in my recollection. I mean, the people were put in place, qualified people. Of course, the media uses the terms controversial with every one of these nominees, but that's just kind of the game. But it looks like he got the thing put together, orchestrated it, did well. And I actually thought there were a couple of guys from Indiana that might run for president before this whole cycle started, he being one and Mitch Daniels being the other. But as it turns out, he'll be the vice president after tomorrow. As we look at all this different things going on in spending, the big concern for a lot of folks is the spending of the money. The national debt increased $8 or $10 trillion over the last 8 years. A lot, frankly. But it's not the president that spends the money. It's Congress. It's you guys that spend the money. So how do we keep that under control? How do we begin to move that back the other way, I guess?
Well, in our Better Way plan that you've talked about, one of the key platform points is that we take back control of the budget process, the appropriations process. More than 50% of our annual budget is mandatory spending. That is to say, it's law. We have no control over it unless we have a president who will sign a repealer of those laws. And that's the effort we want to achieve with a president who has said that he wants to get our budget back in line, begin spending down the debt. And you can only do that by having control of the appropriations process when over half of our budget is already settled. And the discretionary
nothing you can do about it.
Only by getting a bill through like the repealer of Obamacare, which is a mandatory spending item, and having a president who will sign it. So when you look at some of the spending for social services that don't go to people who really need it, when you see the spending for the military, many places with contractors that we have no control over, get that control back under Article 1 powers where we have discretionary spending that's more in percentage than mandatory spending, and I think we'll do fine.
And I agree with you. I mean, tough for you to do your job if your job is already, it's like mandatory sentencing. Why have a judge? You got to have a computer sitting on the desk to do the same thing. If it's mandatory, what control do you have? As you look at different things that I think are of concern to Americans, one of the things that obviously gets talked about, a lot of regulations that, that are hindering the small business of this country, whether it's the EPA or the IRS or whatever it may be. It's time to get some of these regulations out of the way because we've got agencies, bureaucracy of the United States government now that are doing your job. They're setting rules. They're setting penalties. They can come take people's money, their property, their freedom. And this is nothing that's been gone through the members of Congress.
Well, Congress is to blame for that because in an undisciplined way, wanting to get off the hot seat, we put bills through for years now that said basically what the program is about, and then had that sentence that said, and to be administered by...
in the way they see fit or
whatever agency it is.
Sure.
We need that back.
I would say.
One thing that Donald Trump has already said he would sign if we get it to him is the REINS Act. And the REINS Act says that any regulation or rule that has a cost of $100 million or more, and that's almost insignificant, $100 million or more, has to come back to Congress for final approval. That is taking back Article 1 powers. Now, that also puts a responsibility on our backs, and people can say, it's not a bureaucrat that passed that rule. It's you, Walberg, that passed that rule. Why? And I'm going to have to answer that. So I'm willing to do that, and I'm glad we're going to push that bill through the REINS Act. We passed it in the House the past two sessions. This time we'll pass it again. And the Senate hopefully will pass it and send it to the President, who will sign it.
And I hope you're right, because we need to get the regulations from these bureaucracies off the backs of the small businesses that provide 90% of the jobs in this country. And we need to get that engine moving again.
Almost $2 trillion last year of costs just for regulatory compliance costs to our businesses, specifically small businesses. That we're talking of trillions of dollars. It's kind of like our budget debt.
We had a listener yesterday. I've been asking people, what do you want to hear Donald Trump say? What do you want to hear him say in his speech? And the guy said, all I want to hear Donald Trump do is lean into the microphone and say, go. And get everybody out of the way and let people go back to work and get machinery working and building and let that economy go, because American prosperity leads to liberty. You know that. And that's the biggest thing we need.
Well, I chair and be given the opportunity this term to chair the HELP subcommittee, which deals with labor issues, ERISA, pensions, health, and the employment issues. We're going to be looking very closely to make sure, number one, we have a workplace that's still safe. We have those key regulations that protect employees. But we also have to make sure that we don't go overboard and ultimately mess up their job opportunities because they're not there by excessive regulations. So to have a president that understands that, my gracious, it's going to be a new day here.
It's going to be a new day. So I'll give you 30 seconds for the last word on this topic as we head into tomorrow. Historic exchange, peaceful exchange of power. Are you optimistic going into 2017?
I'm optimistic, very optimistic. But even more importantly, the people back in my district are optimistic. I mean, we're seeing it already. We're seeing a capital that's starting to move. We're seeing investments taking place. I'm talking to business people who are now talking about expansion. They feel confident enough that they're going to take those risks that they used to take, and that's all to the good of new employees and present employees. So, no, I'm very optimistic. It's going to be a battle. I don't mind a battle. I wrestled in high school and college. It was a battle on the floor all the time, but you have to go through it to win.
Congressman Tim Walberg, a pleasure having you in studio, sir.
Genuine Michigan common sense on display every day.
All right, it's Thursday, the 19th of January, 2017. It's not often that I have the unique opportunity to watch a member of Congress do a cartwheel. But when I mentioned that Barack Obama's last full day in office was today, our good friend Congressman Bill Huizenga, I believe I saw him do a cartwheel through the door. He seems Well, sir, you seem a little bit giddy.
Yeah, it was. I unfortunately looked a little like John Belushi and Blues Brothers, kind of a cartwheel. It wasn't well executed, but the intent was there. Yes.
There is despite what Michelle Obama may say, there is a palpable measure of optimism in America today in many places, like Michigan, like Indiana, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, the working center of America, that I think is palpable out there. I think people are saying, listen, this is going to work. The guys are already talking about bringing jobs back to whether it's Carrier, Apple, General Motors, Ford, Toyota investing. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, and you've got to feel it too.
We do, and I'm talking to small business owners back in Michigan, and in fact, I just got an email from one yesterday who said, we've been hiring in anticipation. This guy's in the foundry business and in manufacturing, and he said, quite honestly, our problem is finding good qualified people and people who will stay. He also then attached a YouTube video on the millennials and what their work ethic may be or not be. But, that's an optimism that just isn't happening in Michigan and in the Midwest. I was in New York for my committee work yesterday. And, this is not exactly a conservative bastion.
No, I would say not.
And there are folks who are saying, you know what? We feel like we're turning a corner here. The burdensome regulation that is just weighing down the economy from the top all the way down is something that they are excited to see turn a corner.
Well, a couple of things. I mean, as well as I do that Barack Obama, one of the things that he did is punish people that save money. And what I mean by that is the capital gains tax increase that got through when he was there. I think that should be rolled back, because why would you punish people for saving money? That money gets invested into the economy. When you talk about the regulations, whether it's from the EPA or the IRS or wherever, that burdens people. Of course, Obamacare has been a job killer. We all know that. And so there's plans moving that way. We've got to get regulation out of the way and let the country work.
Yeah, we do. And not to mention our artificially low interest rates and with our monetary policy, that has punished seniors tremendously and savers. And, the idea is to then spur the economy and have people invest that money. But what they're doing, Steve, is they're sitting on it. They can't invest it in a more conservative, traditional way because there's no return that way.
You're getting if you're lucky, you're getting 1%.
Exactly. They're not able to have the kind of returns that they would hope to have in a more traditional manner, because we've artificially inflated this economy in a way that it's really truly only benefited the super wealthy, those who have so much excess
cash. And isn't that the irony right there?
It drips with irony.
Because the Democrats are out there all the time saying, well, it's that 1%, those people that are the very policies that they have put forth have created an artificial amount of money floating to the top while everybody else struggles and fights and tries to scratch out a living. Yeah. We need to clear the playing field. We need to lower taxes on the average working people. And I don't care what you do for a living, but if you're working in America, you ought to have a chance to make it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wall Street is doing just fine.
I've noticed.
It's Main Street.
Yep.
And it's not Wall Street's fault. So much as the irony, as you've been pointing out, is that the policies that have been pursued by this administration actually distort the marketplace. It puts those who have those advantages already at a super advantage over the normal, regular working class.
One of the other things that I think is that we need to look at, that Donald Trump's already talked about, is bringing home those offshore profits that are parked overseas. Could be 2, 3, some estimate as high as $3.5 trillion with a T, $1 trillion, that if it came back to America, if you put some sort of a reasonable tax on it, 15%, 10%, whatever it is, bring it back home so it can go to work, buy Caterpillar D9s, clear ground, build factories, make roads, do whatever. We've got infrastructure. We've got great companies in America. Maybe it buys John Deere tractors or General Motors cars or Fords, and it makes America go back to work, because you have to have a robust base economy to make it all work. And then the small businesses, 90% of the jobs in America, especially in places like your district, 90% of those jobs come from small businesses. Get out of the way, please.
Yeah, that's what I hear constantly. Small business owners are the folks that, as you rightly say, are the ones that make this economy not only move but grow. And what happens is for them to go from 3 or 4 employees to 6 or 7 employees, that's a huge jump for them. It doesn't make the newspaper headlines, but that as you were having that multiplied across the economy, that's where you see that real impact. And what they're telling me is that I'm spending more time now doing paperwork than I ever have before.
Exactly.
Which isn't bringing a single dollar in. It's not allowing me to service a single customer.
It's costing jobs directly because money that's being spent and time that's being dedicated to do that work could mean a new part-time employee, an entry-level employee, maybe a mid-level employee. The point is you're doing that plus S corporations getting punished, in the percentage of taxes that are being given away for these smaller corporations. Also, that could be a job for somebody or a part-time job or a second job. The fact of the matter is there are jobs out there. And you mentioned, and I want to focus on this, speaking of jobs and the actual unemployment rate, I don't think that anybody in America believes that the unemployment rate's 4.5%. I don't. I live in Michigan. I look around. I'm like, come on, guys. You're toying with the numbers. Let's be honest.
Yeah, well, there's something in those the Department of Labor reports called the U6, as in like umbrella 6. That's the line that says what the real the real unemployment is and underemployment. Though that counts the folks that have either been so chronically unemployed that they're off the rolls now. Those who are underemployed from what they used to be, that is double, if not more than that, from what the official is. So we're looking at 9% unemployment, really an underemployment here in the country at a minimum. And we now have created, though, this culture of expectation as well. And that's what I'm really afraid of, is what are we doing to future generations? My oldest is a freshman in college, and I've got high schoolers.
You're going to need a second job. Go on.
Oh, yeah. Trust me. D-Day arrives in a couple of years when I've got all 3 in college. But it is it's a work ethic and an expectation that I think government has helped foster. And we've moved from a safety net situation, which I think virtually everybody agrees there ought to be this safety net. There ought to be somebody making sure that our elderly are being cared for, that those who are truly unemployable are able to survive. The question is what do we do with those other folks who are of working age and are able to work and are able-bodied and all those things? And that's where I think the frustration is that I hear from so many people as they look around and go, wait a minute, well, why are they getting this check in the mail?
Well, certainly, and I think part of the problem clearly is the Obamacare that created the part-time workforce, 29 hours a week, because big companies say, listen, we can't employ you more than that. And because if we do, we get penalized. And we're going to hold that thought right there. We're with Congressman Bill Huizenga, representing Michigan, Western Michigan. And we'll talk more about that because I also want to talk about the first 100 days of the Trump administration, some of the other priorities that you see on the horizon. Glad to have you in studio. Don't get that privilege very often. You're listening to the Steve Gruber Show on the last full day in office for Barack Obama. Go ahead, do a cartwheel yourself. We'll be right back.
Michigan, born and raised with Midwestern values and Michigan common sense.
Recorded in front of a live studio audience. It's perfectly fine.
Now, I got to ask about the bump music. So rarely do I come in to Devo and to AC/DC.
Hey, we're here to help you.
This is why I love the Steve Gruber Show. Now, if you could just work a little Rush or Who in, then I'm all
that
all
happens,
set.
too. Make no mistake.
All right, all right.
Yeah. Something for Nothing was on yesterday, as I recall.
Excellent.
Anyhow.
Well, so it is the Obama administration.
Well, there you go. But you can't get something for nothing. They explain that. It's the Ayn Rand theory of the world. At any rate, we are in the Boyle Studios of Hillsdale College, live in Washington, D.C., with our good friend Congressman Bill Huizenga, which we rarely get to meet him and spend time with in person. Usually it's on the phone, but
yeah, I got to say you're much cuter on radio.
I greatly appreciate that, but but the executive producer is much cuter in person, I've noticed. So you have that going for you. As we look at the first of all, the weather's perfect in Washington right now, so I'm excited about the whole day tomorrow. You've probably seen this before. I've never been to an inauguration. I'm excited to be here. We were invited by your office and others, and we said, well, we should probably do that. We're going to go to the Michigan Ball tomorrow, also something we've never done before. This is something that, whether you like the person who won or you don't, this is a great day in America tomorrow because it's the peaceful transfer of power that, from the moment that George Washington handed the baton to John Adams, Nobody knew if it was going to work. And it has worked ever since, and it is a special time in America, and I don't care what your politics are. If you're an American, you should embrace what's happening tomorrow. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The two other inaugurations that I've been a part of, I was a state representative and came to George W. Bush's 2004 re-election inauguration. And then obviously 4 years ago, my seat was a little better 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But I had to watch Beyonce lip sync. Which you can tell. You can tell from stage. It is a pageant that is unlike what we see here in the United States. I'm watching the John Adams DVD series again right now, based on the book John Adams. I highly recommend it. And we forget sometimes that the circumstances that we came out of, the pomp and circumstances of England and the royalty, and how we had those things in the beginning. And it was really George Washington who put this kibosh on any notion of having a monarch or having a sort of a royal imperial.
And he had
kind
the
of
offer. After he won the war, he could have done anything he wanted. He could have set it up any way he wanted. He said, no, we didn't fight for this. And the other thing, reflecting him to what's happening today, the people that were surrounding George Washington when they put together the Constitution, when they set out on the Revolution, these were very wealthy people. And so, a lot of criticism to Donald Trump. Well, look at all the billionaires that he's selecting. He's selecting very accomplished, successful people to surround himself with, from the military, from the business world. And that's the sort of person, being General Washington or the people that he surrounded himself with back then. There's some similarities there about the success and the value of the people that were in that administration and appear to be coming into this one.
Yeah, natural leaders lead.
Winners.
Yes. Yeah. And the idea of, again, us having this transfer of power, peaceful transfer of power for 240 years. And I understand we had a little lag there as we were a confederacy until we, swore in George Washington. But, nonetheless, it's an amazing spectacle to watch, no matter who is up there receiving that oath, when you have former presidents of a different party who are there witnessing it, and really professing the importance of this.
Well, and I'm going to give
important.
credit where credit's due. Bill and Hillary Clinton will be on hand for the inauguration tomorrow, and that speaks volumes, whether you obviously chose to support her or didn't, or chose to support Donald Trump or whomever you may have supported. The fact that Hillary Clinton will be there out of respect for the institution, I give credit where credit is due.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree. And I had the unique opportunity back in 2000 to witness Al Gore read off the electoral college vote in the House of Representatives,
where he was the loser,
yeah, but was vice president and therefore president of the Senate. And all of these challenges that were happening by House members, then they could not find a Senate member to sign the challenge. The exact same thing happened.
But he did his job.
But he did exactly right. He did his job. Exact same thing happened with Joe Biden on the House floor just a couple of weeks ago. And
do you think Joe wakes up these days and goes,
oh my gosh, I'm sure
maybe I should have given that a shot.
Yes, yeah, he had a whole lot happening with the loss of his son and all those things.
That.
But I have no doubt in my mind that not only there are people within his party that you kind of have three factions. The Hillary was the right person all the time, and just it was circumstances that fouled this up for her. I'll use that word.
Yeah.
Then you've got I told you we should have gotten Biden into this thing crowd, and then you have. You people don't understand. Bernie Sanders was the answer from before the question was formulated, and that's kind of the infighting and the factionalism that's happening over on the other side of the aisle.
I get this feeling from you, or Congressman Bill Huizenga, that you have an energy about you today here in person that I think is infectious in a way. I think it's optimism, and you have an infectious optimism right now, because I think. We've only got about a minute left here, but I think as we head into the new year and the new Congress 2017, you feel like we can really get some things done around here.
We can. And, I sit on the Financial Services Committee, which is one of the more powerful committees. We're dealing with Dodd-Frank and the burdens, the shackles that have been put on the economy from the regulatory side are just really hard to even describe and for people to fully understand. The opportunities that we have here, and we have to do it carefully, but we have to do it. And it's not going to be easy, whether it's in our healthcare. This is going to be a bumpy road, Steve. But it was going to be a bumpy road whether Hillary Clinton was president and trying to limp along Obamacare the way it was, or it was going to be a bumpy road with Donald Trump. I would rather put in the hard work on changing it and replacing it and come out with a better outcome.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. Things in this world that are worthwhile take hard work. Congressman Bill Huizenga, we got to run for today. We'll see you tomorrow. But things that are worth something take hard work, work ethic, and dedication. Thank you for being here.
Hey, pleasure to be with you. Glad you're here out here in D.C.
It's the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back. It is 55 after the hour. A quick break from politics. We talk about getting you healthy because the biggest event of the year for Wycoff Wellness that you can find at wycoffwellness.com is happening this weekend as well. Dr. John Wycoff with me to tell us about all the great things going on. Doctor, welcome back.
Thank you, Steve. We have our annual Ring in a Healthy New Year event, always in January, almost always the third Saturday in January, and that means it will be the day after inauguration, this Saturday the 21st, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Everyone's invited to come down to Wycoff Wellness. It's going to be a beautiful day. We're in East Lansing on Michigan Avenue. Once a year, package discounts on all of our great services, things like ultraviolet blood irradiation, IV infusions, 20% off once a year, savings on all of our supplements. That's both in our office and online at wycoffwellness.com. You don't have to be a patient to take advantage of any of our supplements. They're high quality. Anyone can buy them. You can come down and learn more about how to take charge of your health, how to prevent getting sick this winter, how to look at natural solutions for your anxiety or your sleep or your blood pressure or to help manage your weight. You can see our Verju body contouring laser. Going to give away thousands of dollars in prizes. Lots of fun all day long. We've got refreshments, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Saturday at Wycoff Wellness.
And if you want to find out more, you can also go to wycoffwellness.com. Doctor, thank you very much. I hope it's a great event.
Thank you, Steve. You have a great time in Washington.
There you have it. Dr. John Wycoff, our good friend, and one of the folks that helped us put this event together by being a partner with us here for this program, as did our good friends at Like Law. When you need a trusted law firm built on integrity and experience, contact Christina Like at Like Law. This hour also brought to you in part by DTE Energy, providing safe, reliable natural gas to businesses across Michigan. DTE Energy, know your own power. And I also want to say a special thank you to Hillsdale College for allowing us to use the Boyle Studios here on Capitol Hill. What a fabulous facility it is. We'll be here again tomorrow before we head off to the inauguration, which we will, of course, share with you on Monday, the sights and sounds. We'll also be doing live Facebook posts. I'm not sure how that works, but we are going to figure it out. Or, well, Ivy's going to figure it out. Until tomorrow, my friends, keep the faith. I'm Steve Gruber. This is The Steve Gruber Show.